Me personally, uh, I see there's these false dichotomies, which again they're they're false, and I find that I'm doing well when I'm able to see them for what they are and address them. And this idea, and it's been like this my whole life. When I first began to follow Christ, this idea of having my Christianity over here, and then like this kind of this bifurcation of my spiritual life, and then everything else over here just never made sense to me. Why bother? Now that doesn't mean that there isn't, excuse me, seasons and times, because there's seasons and times, and that's the way I look at some of the distinction between liturgical art and non-liturgical art, or liturgical expression and non-liturgical expression. It's just about seasons and timing, appropriateness. So it's not a either or for me. I think that's probably the nutshell of it. One of my favorite artists is Alphonse Mucha, who is pretty much seen as like the father of Art Nouveau. And most people, he's a fairly well-known artist, and there's a large appreciation for him by people who aren't even art aficionados and such. So what I'm getting at is they don't always know why they like Mucha. They don't always know what is it about Mucha that kind of draws them in. Well, Mucha was a Slav, and there's a lot of Byzantine influence in the work of Mucha. Things that people don't even realize that are there. And not just certain superficial aspects like his employment of a halo and things like that in his design, but in the philosophy in which he approached art and the reason why he did what he did. And so that Mucha's work to me is a prime example of what it looks like to create something beautiful, because the church is the cradle in which we're brought to life, and the home in which we're educated, and the place where we learn about love. And where you learn about love is the very schoolhouse where you go and you begin to fall in love with someone else, and you begin to work and put your hands to things, right? In a house, a daughter is taught what a beautiful, quilt looks like, or what really good soup tastes like. That's where she learns. It's where a son learns how to build something or do something. And then from there they go out in the world and they make their own quilt, and they make their own soup, and they find someone else and they get married. And to me, that's the relationship between the church, expressions of liturgical expressions and non-liturgical expressions. It informs, the one informs the other, but something new comes. And I think that's the other thing too, is that we're supposed to be dynamic and not static. And I don't go back to a person doesn't go back to their parents' house and start wanting to, if it was healthy and good, they don't go back and start changing everything. They appreciate the traditions and the home in which they were raised. And they go and they build their home, and that home is not disconnected. It's connected, right? When you have your own children, let's go to grandma's house, grandpa's house, right? And the children will see grandma and grandpa's house in their home too, when it's healthy. And this is the same thing with art. Something new, right? You need something new, because the grandchildren are living in a world different than the grandparents. The parents are the bridge to that. And the parents, when they're healthy and right, they love and treasure the tradition and the ground in which they were raised, but they also realize that they have their own home now, and that's giving birth, right? So there isn't this need to kind of sever. And I think that's one of the things we struggle with. You see it in our society. Kids 18, get out of here. That's odd. Traditional, I grew up in Southern California, and I was surrounded by specifically Mexicans and Vietnamese and some Laotian people. And seeing how they had a traditional culture, there wasn't this like hard, fast, okay, 18, get out of here. That only happened once, second, third generation, and those kids were wanting to be more American, quote unquote. And there was a shame of like that immigrant ancestry. But when that wasn't there, when there wasn't that shame and that desire to have a premature severing, it's beautiful. Their being Mexican and maintaining traditional Mexican culture wasn't about hating being American. In fact, the more they embraced it, I felt the more they were American in some regards. It was healthy. I think this is the same thing. When people become self-conscious in a bad way about their expression, you can just feel it. As an artist, right? I can just feel it. I can feel when someone's trying too hard. But when someone's onto something, when it's natural and it flows out of them, and I understand, that's one of the big things. It's not always accident, right? There are people who they really understand and they are conscious of maintaining that, and that's what I'm talking about as well. Saying like, I can't lose this, right? That's good and healthy. And when they do that, their expression, their art, you can feel it. I remember, and I met my wife in college, and I remember in the portion of school when we were taught about critique and we were learning to critique and proper critique. One of the things my professor she had told us, was that we would draw hands, and then she said, you can present the hands to anyone. They don't have to be a trained artist. Everyone's going to know whether it's a good hand or a bad hand. Why? Because intuitively everyone knows what a hand is. And they may not know why the drawing is good or why it's not as good, but they'll know that something's off. Well, some people, they understand why it's off. I can look at a hand and I can tell you why that hand is off. And so for me, that kind of awareness is good. But I don't think that's it. I think there's just some people who there's a measure of honesty in their expression that they need to just maintain. And so it's probably the same thing in regards of, for me, it's all this is connected. It's the same issues we're having with Orthodoxy in America, the same issues with race. When someone's not comfortable within themselves, they're not comfortable with others. When you become comfortable with yourself, including your limitations, then you become much more comfortable with others' limitations. So whether it's expression, relation, because all these things are the same, right? They're all art, right? And that's why, it's art and not science. There is this kind of mystical quality to it that you can't put your finger on per se. But the balance of love and respect, that's that little thing that I think allows the harmony to be present between the two. Just knowing the time and the place, it's the biggest thing, and respecting that.
Did years burn out those words? Did a voice whisper absurd? Did your mind comprehend and ask if you'd last till the end?